100,000 years ago, the Foreigners were preparing their weapon of last resort. The flood had swept across the galaxy and consumed nearly all sentient life. The Foreigners brought their dwindling military to the fore to hold back the flood onslaught and to buy time for the conservation measure to be put into effect. The librarian and her life workers travelled to countless worlds across the galaxy and indexed species and genetic material from nearly all known species. The plan? To allow the halos to be fired to commit mass genocide and destroy all life in the galaxy, the flood included. And then, after the effects of the halo had worn off, to reseed life in the galaxy with these living specimens and genetic material, to see that life would return to its proper cadence. And one particular technology was instrumental in this effort, and held all the potential of the future within their housings. And indeed, the Cylixes likely hold all the promise of the future of Halo. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and just before we get started, I just want to quickly update you on a few things. Now, I have a plethora of videos lined up, ready to go for this new story, this new part of Halo that we've just been greeted with. This includes tons of normal lore, this includes loads of armory videos, but it also includes some extraordinarily deep narrative that's kind of a subplot underneath the subplots of Halo Infinite, and I'm already exploring the suggested directions that this subplot could lead us in. There are most detailed breakdowns coming of the Gen 3 platform and a more encompassing breakdown of the Mark 7 platform of Mjolnir. And I just wanted to take a quick second to acknowledge and thank you guys for watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting on my videos as of late. Now that we've got this new content and a week has elapsed since the actual launch of Halo Infinite, my Halo Infinite content is now just about to start. I wanted to give kind of a week's grace period where it allows people to go through the campaign, complete the campaign, and get a feel for Halo Infinite before I started releasing videos that spoiled any key plot points. So again, thank you for sticking with me, and thanks for pushing us over the 150,000 subscriber mark, which is pretty awesome in and of itself. I tried to not make a point of saying it, but just in case, just check that you're subscribed still, and if you thought you were subscribed but you're no longer subscribed, it's likely YouTube, just, being YouTube, so hit that subscribe button again. And if you're not subscribed and you've seen a few of my videos and you like what you see, and you want some more really in-depth Halo Infinite and Halo content in general, hit the subscribe button and jump aboard. We've got some awesome stuff to cover in the coming weeks, months, and, well, the coming 10 years, to be quite honest. But with all of that said, let's get to the actual subject of this video. Very shortly after the Chief's recovery by Echo 216, the Master Chief ventures to the surface of Zeta Halo to look for the weapon. After clearing a facility of banished forces, he entered the chamber that held the weapon and is confronted by dozens of massive, floating Cylixes, with the pictogram image of a human on the front of it in blue light. This isn't the only instance that Chief would come across the Cylixes. He would indeed come across one that had been opened that once contained the Harbinger, and many more that had the pictogram representations of many of the member species of the Banished and the Covenant before them on the front of the Cylixes. And there is even one with the representation of a flood infection form. Cylixes are not a new addition to the lore of Halo. They were first seen in Halo Legends Origins Part 1, while Cortana monologued to the Master Chief while he was in cryo following the events of Halo 3 and the Battle of the Ark. Although it is worth noting that her musings on the events that transpired before and after the firing of the Halo arrays were based on relatively incomplete data that she had gathered from Alpha Halo, Delta Halo, and the Ark. While the Cylixes appear to be massive metallic monoliths, the truth of their technology is actually quite impressive. The Cylix's primary purpose were to store living specimens of different species. They did this by having internal slip-space fields under masterful control via the Forerunners' impressive technology. This in and of itself included a time lock. This effectively meant that the individual inside would not feel the passage of time at all. Time for them would stand completely still. It is also possible that an individual Cylix may have actually contained multiple individuals. I say this because there's only one confirmed instance of a Cylix being opened on Zeta Halo, and that's the one that contained the Harbinger, and yet the Harbinger is seemingly joined by dozens, perhaps hundreds of skimmers, which at least at face value appear to be members of her species. So if the Cylix only contained one individual, and the one that was opened contained only the Harbinger, then one has to question where did all of the skimmers come from, if it is indeed the case that a single Cylix can contain more than one individual and can contain dozens or perhaps hundreds of individuals. Then this is also positively reinforced by the observations of the masterful control of slipspace technology that we've already seen the Forerunners demonstrate themselves. The shield world at the centre of Onyx, called Sarcophagus, is a massive Dyson sphere, which actually has a radius of 1 astronomical unit. This means that the inner surface of the shell is the same distance from the centre as the Earth is from the Sun. Indeed, when Sarcophagus was briefly brought out of slipspace into normal space, it actually encapsulated several smaller planets within that void, and when it re-entered slipspace, it took those planets with it. And when in slipspace, the entirety of Sarcophagus is only a few meters across. The physical footprint of a massive Dyson sphere held within a slipspace field only holds the same equivalent space of roughly that of an average car. Even Forerunner ships, including the one that the Didact used to flee Earth when he was awoken by Born Stellar Makes Eternal Lasting, Chakas and Riser, had rooms within it that took up more physical space on the inside than it did on the outside. This is simply due to the masterful control of slipspace dimensions. So as far as the plausibility of a Cylix being able to hold more than one individual within its relatively conservative packet size is completely within the boundaries of possibility. But there are a few oddities in regards to the Cylixes that are particularly featured on Zeta Halo. I find it immensely interesting that the first Cylixes we come across are that of humans. Now, this isn't just modern humans, these are the ancient humans. It could be argued that these ancient humans are along the same lines as Chakas and Riser were, being humans preserved from after they were devolved by the Forerunners for their seeming rebellion against the Forerunners' will. But that may not necessarily be entirely the case, given that the Harbinger and members of her species were apparently locked inside of these as prisoners, using a Cylix, which, at least at face value, is an item used to index species, as a prison is a very unusual use of a Cylix. So this could lend to the possibility of these Cylixes with the ancient humans within them actually being the true ancient humans, the ones that are superior to modern humans. But until we are given any additional information, it's hard to say for certain. In truth, even the Endless being stored inside of the Cylixes as prisoners could have literally just been a last resort kind of situation. The plot seems to suggest that the Harbinger and perhaps the Skimmers are members of a species simply known as the Endless. And the reasons behind why the Endless ended up being imprisoned within these Cylixes is actually quite an interesting one. When the Halos were fired, it wiped the galaxy clean of all sentient life. That was Halo's purpose, and it did it remarkably well, with one exception. Around 100 years after the Halos were fired, the Endless were found alive and well on their homeworld, having been inexplicably unaffected by the firing of the Halos, with some suggestion being that they had a masterful control of time, perhaps being an explanation as to how they were able to subvert the effects of the halo array. The Foreigners evidently deemed this significant enough of a threat in the fact that they managed to survive the firing of the array that they deemed them dangerous and imprisoned them within the Cylixes. This could be the reason as to why they were imprisoned within Cylixes and not in any other device, simply because that was one of the most easy and accessible technologies at the time to store the Endless within, as the Foreigners' discovery of the Endless surviving the halo firing was completely and utterly unplanned for. It was kind of a last-minute act to store them in Cylixes. The Cylixes quite clearly and simply display the member species contained within on the front of the Cylix in a holographic pictogram representation. Practically all of the Cylixes that Master Chief comes in contact with during his time on Zeta Halo are almost immediately identifiable based on these pictograms. Except one. One is a little more vague, at least at first glance, until you look closer. Many have seen this and thought that they were an insectoid-like species, like ants or spiders. Others still, including myself for a while, thought they could be the Cylixes of the Tuliok, a species of flying creatures that are found amongst the data crystals of the now absent Mendicant Bias within the depths of Zeta Halo. But after a short while of pondering the situation, it becomes apparent this is a Cylix containing flood infection forms. And while the flood are normally stored in flood research facilities, having them stored within a Cylix is a relatively confusing decision on the Foreigners' part. We already know that there are 10 proto-Gravemind stored somewhere on Zeta Halo, along with likely countless other flood specimens for research purposes. But why store infection forms in a Cylix? At this stage in the story, we're still cultivating information. This is a new campaign, a new era of Halo is dawning, and at the moment we're having a lot of scenes that are being set, a lot of stories that are being sown. And it's hardly surprising given that Halo Infinite is supposed to be the next 10 years of Halo. If there is going to be DLC or simply just newer campaigns that we will have access to over the coming years, it stands to reason that on the opening episode, so to speak, of this new story, you sow as many seeds of narrative as humanly possible so you have a rich and varied narrative to call upon over the coming decade. The Cylixes are another immensely impressive and almost elegantly simple piece of technology that highlights just how powerful the Foreigners truly were. And with the return of the Endless apparently being on the horizon, the Cylixes are going to become an even more prominent factor for our consideration as we continue to move into the future. Thanks for watching. Stick your comments down below, I look forward to what you have to say. I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons and YouTube members Neek the Silent Cartographer, Siphonic Storm and Todd Morrison, my Tier 0 Transcendients, Brian, Sebastian, Darian, Red Sea, Stalk of the Realms, Falcon X003, Starlight, Alvin, Flaming Halo, Josh, Legions Lost, Kyle, Cat Erdicam, Schneidish, Leon, Ignizzle, Chris, Cooper, Prophet, and Devon, the holders of the mantle, my glorious reclaimers, my loyal Metarchs, and all the other patrons and YouTube members that have jumped aboard to support the channel. Much love to you guys, thanks so much for your support. It's keeping things happening and helping development of the channel and future awesomeness in a big way. If you like Halo lore discussed to insane levels of detail, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon so you're told the second a new video hits the shelves. Be sure to support us on all major social media channels, including Discord, and if you really love the channel, consider heading over to Patreon and supporting the channel over there, or jumping on as a channel member. It means the world to me and affords you loads of great perks and bonuses, while also helping work towards some awesome stuff in the near and distant future. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.